You smile, extend your hand, and offer a firm handshake. To you, it's a polite professional greeting, but the other person hesitates, gives a weak response, and avoids eye contact. You wonder, did I do something wrong? The answer might surprise you. Yes, just not in the way you think. We live in a world where travel is easier, remote work is rising, and cross-cultural relationships are the norm rather than the exception. Yet for all our globalization, something as simple as a thank you or a pause in conversation can still derail an interaction. What seems courteous in one culture can come off as cold, bizarre, or even insulting in another. This isn't just about grand traditions or ancient customs. It's about the tiniest signals, the way you pass a business card, how long you hold someone's gaze, whether you clear your plate or leave a bite of food. These are the invisible micro-rules of culture, the subtle norms and unspoken expectations that govern everyday behavior. They are often so deeply embedded that we don't even recognize them as rules at all until we break them. Culture is like an iceberg. What's visible, language, dress, food, floats above the surface. But most of it remains submerged: values, assumptions, and those delicate, invisible shoulds and should-nots. This is where politeness lives, not in what you do, but in whether what you do aligns with someone else's silent script. In this story, we'll dive into the world of cultural micro-rules, the polite gestures that can offend, the rude acts that are expected, and the psychology, history, and social logic behind it all. You might walk away rethinking everything from how you sit to how you chew, and that's the point. Because sometimes, politeness is just a matter of geography. Let's start with something as basic as eye contact, a gesture so universal, it feels hardwired. In many Western cultures, particularly the United States, making direct eye contact is a sign of confidence, respect, and sincerity. Children are often taught, look people in the eye when you're speaking to them. Avoiding someone's gaze might be interpreted as suspicious, evasive, or even guilty. But in parts of East Asia, Africa, and indigenous cultures around the world, prolonged eye contact, especially with someone older or in a position of authority, can be seen as confrontational or deeply disrespectful. In Japan, students are often taught to focus on the neck or chest of a teacher, rather than making direct eye contact. In Nigeria, children are explicitly warned not to stare at elders. And in many Arab cultures, context is key. Eye contact between men is a sign of engagement, but between men and women, it can be inappropriate or provocative. This is one of the clearest examples of how micro-rules evolve differently based on cultural priorities. In individualistic societies, where independence and self-expression are emphasized, eye contact signals confidence. In collectivist societies, where harmony and hierarchy matter more, averting your gaze can be a gesture of humility and respect. What makes this so tricky is that these rules are rarely taught explicitly. No one hands you a guidebook saying, in this country, don't stare too long. Or, here, please slurp your noodles loudly. You're expected to know. And if you don't, the offense is often silently noted but never explained. This brings us to another everyday minefield: silence. In American or British contexts, pauses in conversation often feel awkward, like something's gone wrong, someone's bored, or there's tension. So people rush to fill the space with small talk, jokes, or transitions. But in Finland, silence is golden. It shows you're being thoughtful, respectful. In Japan, a quiet moment means you're truly listening. Meanwhile, in cultures like Italy or Brazil, overlapping conversation is completely normal. Talking over each other isn't rude. It's a sign of enthusiasm and engagement. An American might feel interrupted, while an Italian might wonder why you're so passive. So here we are, the same gestures, looking, pausing, speaking, reinterpreted through wildly different cultural lenses. And every moment holds the possibility of misunderstanding. Imagine you're visiting a friend in Tokyo. You bring a small box of chocolates, nicely wrapped. As you hand it over, your friend waves it off modestly. Oh no, you shouldn't have. You pause, confused. Was it too much? Too cheap? Too soon? But no, this is part of the dance. In many East Asian cultures, it's polite to initially decline a gift, even if you intend to accept it later. Saying yes right away might seem greedy or overly eager. Now imagine doing the same in the US, handing someone a gift and hearing, "No, I can't accept that." In most Western contexts, that's a genuine refusal. You probably wouldn't press them again. The line between politeness and discomfort shifts depending on the cultural script you're following. Gift-giving is a classic case of cultural friction. In China, giving a clock as a gift is taboo. The word for clock sounds like the word for a funeral ritual. In Russia, even numbers of flowers are for the dead. In some Middle Eastern cultures, gifts should be offered with the right hand or both hands, never the left. None of these rules are obvious. You only know them if you're taught, told, or if you learn the hard way. And then there's the dinner table, where perhaps more than anywhere else, politeness is a performance. Consider how much meaning we attach to eating styles. In the US or the UK, making noise while eating is frowned upon. Slurping, burping, or chewing loudly are considered poor manners. But travel to Japan, and slurping your ramen is not only acceptable, it's encouraged. It's a sign that you're enjoying the meal. In India or Ethiopia, eating with your hands is perfectly normal, even elegant, if done properly. In France, resting your hands on your lap at the table is strange. Your hands should be visible, but don't rest your elbows. Even finishing your food can send mixed signals. In most Western cultures, clearing your plate is a compliment to the chef. But in China or Thailand, it might imply you weren't served enough. Leaving a small bite shows you're satisfied. And how close do you stand when speaking to someone? In Latin American or Arab cultures, physical proximity and light touching during conversation are signs of warmth and trust. In contrast, people from Nordic countries might interpret that closeness as invasive or aggressive. It's not just about what's right or wrong, it's about the context. The correct behavior is not universal. It's coded by place, history, tradition, and what each culture considers respectful. And when you mix people from these different systems in workplaces, classrooms, or international friendships, those little misalignments can become big moments of tension. Behind these countless micro-rules lies something deeper: how societies are structured, how they've evolved, and what they value most. In psychology and anthropology, there's a well-established divide between individualistic and collectivist cultures. Western nations like the United States, Canada, and much of Western Europe are largely individualistic. They emphasize personal freedom, self-expression, and independence. These values are reflected in their social norms: open communication, assertiveness, and the importance of standing out. By contrast, many Asian, African, and Latin American societies are more collectivist. Harmony, group cohesion, and respect for hierarchy are prioritized. In these cultures, blending in is often better than standing out, and indirect communication is used to avoid confrontation or shame. This lens helps explain the vastly different interpretations of politeness. Where individualism reigns, being yourself is a virtue. Where collectivism dominates, being mindful of others, even at the cost of expressing your personal opinion, is seen as more honorable. But it's not just East versus West. Geography, climate, population density, religion, and historical trauma all shape the way people relate to each other. In densely populated places, for example, people may develop stronger norms around quietness or spatial boundaries. In societies with deep religious roots, ritualistic or symbolic behavior, like removing shoes before entering a home or refusing alcohol, becomes ingrained as moral, not just polite. Even time plays a role. Cultures vary in how they perceive punctuality. In Germany or Switzerland, being 5 minutes late is an affront. In many Caribbean or South American nations, time is more fluid, what's called polychronic culture, where relationships take precedence over schedules. And then there's power distance, the degree to which inequality is accepted. In high power distance, societies like Malaysia or Russia, status and seniority are respected through formal address and gestures. In low power distance cultures like Australia or Denmark, even the CEO might be called by their first name. What feels natural to you, whether it's joking with your boss or hugging a stranger, may be jarring to someone else. Because cultural rules are not just about etiquette. They are psychological defense systems, evolved to maintain social order within that culture's unique environment. Understanding this can be liberating. It shifts the question from who's right to what's the logic behind this. And with that, cultural missteps become opportunities not for embarrassment, but for insight. In a world that feels increasingly connected, it's easy to assume that politeness is universal. But cultural micro-rules can turn even the best intentions into awkward misunderstandings, or worse, into perceived slights. Consider a real-world example. An American executive flies to Japan to finalize a business deal. He arrives with a casual charm, dressed in smart but relaxed clothing, cracking jokes and trying to build rapport. He offers his business card with one hand, glances at his phone during meetings, and maintains constant eye contact. To him, he's being friendly, efficient, and engaged. But to his Japanese counterparts, this conduct borders on offensive. In Japanese business culture, formality and ritual matter. Exchanging business cards is a solemn gesture, typically done with both hands and a slight bow. Looking at your phone signals disrespect. Constant eye contact can feel aggressive. Humor is subtle and indirect. And casual dress may imply a lack of seriousness. The deal quietly falls apart. Or take a smaller, more personal scenario. A tourist from the UK visits a home in rural India. After dinner, she politely clears her plate completely, a sign of appreciation where she's from. But her host frowns, rushes to the kitchen, and returns with more food. To him, an empty plate signals that the guest is still hungry and he's failed as a host. These misunderstandings are rarely malicious, but they reveal how politeness is not a fixed code of conduct, it's a contract between people who agree on what counts as respectful. When you step into a new culture, you're entering a world where that contract has different terms. Without realizing it, you might be breaking rules you never knew existed. And these missteps don't just affect travelers. They matter in multicultural classrooms, global teams, dating across cultures, immigration, diplomacy. Every time people from different worlds interact, the risk of invisible offense or misplaced judgment is high. But there's good news. Awareness is powerful. The more we understand the logic behind different norms, the better equipped we are to navigate them, not just to avoid offense, but to build real connection. After all, recognizing and respecting someone else's invisible rules is one of the most profound gestures of politeness there is. What this journey through cultural micro-rules reveals is simple yet profound. There is no universal language of politeness. What's kind in Cairo may be cold in Copenhagen. What's rude in Toronto might be respectful in Tokyo. These rules, tiny and invisible, are shaped by centuries of history, by geography, by values passed down not in textbooks, but through glances, silences, and subtle cues. But here's the most important truth. While the rules of etiquette vary, the intention behind them is often the same. Whether it's bowing, shaking hands, standing close, or staying silent, the goal is to show respect, build trust, and avoid harm. It's just that each culture defines those things differently. So the next time someone does something that strikes you as odd, rude, or inappropriate, pause. Ask yourself, is this impoliteness, or is this a different kind of politeness I don't yet understand? Because in the end, it's not just about learning new customs. It's about developing a deeper, more flexible empathy. It's about traveling not just across borders, but across perspectives. And in an interconnected world, that might be the most polite thing we can do.